You finally lie down to sleep, and instead of peace, your mind gets louder. The room is quiet, but inside, nothing is quiet. Thoughts you pushed aside all day come back with force. Small regrets feel heavier. Tomorrow starts pressing on you before today has even fully ended. What should feel like rest turns into one more struggle you have to endure. A lot of nights feel this way for one reason. The day ends, but nothing inside you has really been settled. You move through hours of pressure, distraction, unfinished thoughts, emotional residue, and low-grade tension. You keep going, but you never really clear any of it. Then night arrives, the outside world slows down, and your mind is left alone with everything you carried but never released. That is why sleep becomes harder than it should be. Your body may be ready to rest, but your inner world is still unsettled, and that is where this episode begins. The night is not just the end of the day. It is a chance to end the day properly, a chance to clear the mind, release what is heavy, and prepare yourself inwardly before sleep. The Stoics understood this deeply. Seneca wrote about reviewing his day before bed, not to judge himself harshly, but to meet the night with clarity instead of confusion. Once you begin doing that, sleep changes. It stops feeling like an escape from mental noise and starts becoming a deliberate act of inner order. So before we get to the 10 things you should do every night before sleep, we need to begin with the first one, looking back honestly at the day you just lived. Lesson 1. Reflect on your day. Before you ask your body to rest, give your mind a place to land. That is what reflection really is. It is not overthinking. It is not replaying the day in a punishing way. It is not lying in bed and reopening every awkward moment until your chest feels tight. Real reflection is quieter than that. It is the simple act of looking back with honesty and calm, so the day does not stay half open inside you. A lot of people never do this. They rush through the day, carry everything in silence, and then expect sleep to fix what they never faced. But the mind does not work that way. If something felt heavy, confusing, or unfinished, it often waits until night to return. And when it returns in the dark, it usually feels louder. The same thought that was easy to ignore at noon suddenly feels important. A mistake you brushed aside starts growing weight. A reaction you were too busy to examine begins pressing on your conscience. This is why reflection matters so much. It helps you meet the day on purpose, before the night turns it into noise. Think of it as closing the emotional and mental doors you left open. You ask yourself, quietly, what kind of day did I actually live? Not what did I get done, not how did I look to other people, not whether the day was productive enough to satisfy some impossible standard. Something deeper than that. How did I carry myself? Where was I steady? Where was I careless? What pulled me out of alignment? What did this day reveal about my mind, my habits, my reactions, my values? Questions like that do something important. They bring you back from performance to truth. During the day, it is easy to stay on the surface. You answer messages, move from one task to another, deal with small stresses, carry conversations, make decisions, react to delays, try to keep everything going. But when night comes, you finally have a chance to ask a more serious question. How did I really live today? That question is not there to shame you. It is there to wake you up gently. Because if you never look back honestly, you keep repeating yourself blindly. Reflection breaks that cycle. It turns one ordinary day into instruction. This is one reason the Stoics valued the night so much. Seneca wrote about examining his day before sleep, asking what he had done well, where he had failed, and what needed correction. What matters in that practice is not the severity. It is the clarity. He was not trying to become his own enemy before bed. He was refusing to go to sleep unconscious of how he had lived. That is a powerful habit. It changes the relationship you have with yourself. Instead of drifting from one day into the next, you begin creating continuity. You start learning from your actual life, not from abstract advice. You notice patterns sooner. Maybe you see that one kind of conversation always leaves you internally agitated. Maybe you realize your patience disappears when you are tired. Maybe you notice that your mornings go badly when your evenings are scattered. Maybe you see that something small kept bothering you all day because you refused to face it when it happened. Reflection makes these things visible, and once they are visible, you are no longer being run by them in the same way. There is also something deeply calming about this practice. A day feels heavier when it remains undefined. When everything is mixed together, the mind cannot tell what needs attention, what needs forgiveness, what needs correction, and what simply needs to be put down. Reflection separates things. It helps you say, this part went well, this part did not. This is what I need to improve. This is what I need to release. That kind of inner order makes sleep easier, because confusion always keeps the mind more awake than truth does. And notice something important here. Honest reflection is not the same as emotional self-attack. A lot of people think they are being reflective when they are really just being harsh. They lie in bed and call themselves lazy, weak, embarrassing, behind, not enough. That is not wisdom. That is exhaustion speaking without discipline. Reflection should make you clearer, not smaller. It should help you see yourself accurately, not cruelly. The point is to understand the day, not to turn it into a courtroom. So keep it simple. Sit with the day for a few minutes. Let your mind walk back through it without rush. Notice where you were present and where you were not. Notice what disturbed your peace. Notice where you acted from strength and where you acted from ego, fear, irritation, or distraction. Let the truth be plain. If something was good, admit it. If something was weak, admit that too. The moment you stop hiding from your own day, the day starts teaching you something. That is how growth becomes real. Not because you promised yourself a better life in some dramatic moment, but because each night you became a little more honest, a little more aware, a little less asleep inside your own patterns. Reflection turns the night into a mirror, and if you are willing to look into it without denial and without cruelty, it will slowly make you wiser. Then sleep begins to feel different. You are no longer collapsing into bed with a mind full of loose ends. You are entering the night having met yourself. The day may not have been perfect, but it was seen, it was acknowledged, it was understood a little better than before, and that alone can bring more peace than many people realize, because sometimes what your mind needs before sleep is not distraction, it is honesty. Lesson 2. Own your mistakes. A night routine becomes honest the moment you stop protecting yourself from the truth. That is where this second practice begins. After you reflect on your day, the next step is harder, but also more freeing. Own your mistakes. Not dramatically, not with shame, not by turning the whole day into a confession of how flawed you are, just with clean honesty. You look at what was yours and you stop trying to blur it, soften it, or explain it away. This matters more than people think, because a lot of inner noise comes from quiet self-deception. You know when you were wrong, but you keep arguing with it. You know that your tone was off, that your laziness had nothing to do with being overwhelmed, that your silence came from fear, that your reaction came from ego, that your delay came from avoidance. Deep down, you know. But instead of facing it simply, the mind starts building comfort around it. It adds excuses. It edits the story. It protects your image in your own eyes. And that protection may feel soothing for a moment, but it leaves something unresolved inside you. That unresolved feeling often follows you into bed. You may not even call it guilt at first. Sometimes it shows up as restlessness, sometimes as a strange heaviness, sometimes as mental replay. The day keeps circling back because some part of you knows that truth was avoided. This is why owning your mistakes can be so calming. It removes the argument. It ends the inner split. The mind no longer has to keep defending what the conscience has already seen clearly. There is a kind of peace that only comes when you stop lying to yourself. That peace does not come from being perfect. It comes from being sincere. You say, yes, I handled that badly. Yes, I spoke from irritation. Yes, I wasted time I could have used better. Yes, I avoided something that needed courage. Yes, I was careless in a place where I should have been more disciplined. Once the truth is named, something inside you settles, not because the mistake disappears, but because you are no longer carrying the extra burden of pretending. The Stoics were serious about this. They believed that the person who cannot examine himself honestly will keep living at the mercy of the same patterns. Seneca, especially, understood that self-review only has value when it includes moral courage. There is no growth in reflection if every failure gets hidden beneath explanation. A mistake does not become less real because you have a reason for it. Sometimes the reason matters, of course. Fatigue matters. Pain matters. Pressure matters. But none of those things should become a shelter for behavior you know needs correction. This is where maturity begins to deepen. A childish mind wants innocence more than truth. It wants to feel right. It wants to protect its self-image. It wants to avoid the discomfort of saying, that part was mine. But a stronger mind starts wanting something better than innocence. It wants clarity. It wants correction. It wants to become the kind of person who can face a flaw without collapsing under it. That shift changes the whole mood of the night. Instead of carrying vague regret, you begin naming things plainly. You do not need a long ritual for this. Sometimes a few honest sentences are enough. I was impatient today. I let distraction win too easily. I avoided a conversation that needed to happen. I gave too much energy to something small. I was not as disciplined as I said I wanted to be. That kind of honesty has weight, but it also has cleanliness. It cuts through the fog. And once the mistake is owned, it can finally teach you something. That is the real point. Owning a mistake is not about punishment. It is about growth. If you never admit what happened, then tomorrow becomes just another repetition of today. But once you face it, you can start asking better questions. What triggered that reaction in me? Why did I choose comfort there? What was I avoiding? What would strength have looked like in that moment? These questions do not trap you in the past. They prepare you for the future. They make the mistake useful. There is also an important difference between responsibility and self-attack. Self-attack says, I made a mistake, so there must be something wrong with me. Responsibility says, I made a mistake, so there is something I need to correct. One leads to shame. The other leads to structure. One makes you smaller, the other makes you more awake. If your nightly reflection turns into cruelty, it will eventually make you avoid honesty altogether. But if it becomes a place where truth can be faced without drama, you will start trusting yourself more, not less. That trust matters. A person who owns his mistakes becomes lighter, not because he makes fewer errors immediately, but because he stops dragging denial through his life. He apologizes sooner, he adjusts faster, he learns more cleanly. He sleeps with less friction in the soul. There is strength in that, quiet strength, the kind that does not need to look flawless because it has chosen something deeper than appearance. So tonight, when you look back on your day, do not stop at vague reflection. Go one step further. Find the places where you already know the truth and stop trying to soften it. Let the excuses fall away. Be fair, but be exact. Meet yourself without drama and without hiding. Because the day ends differently when you tell yourself the truth about who you were in it. And strangely enough, that truth does not make the night heavier. It makes sleep cleaner. Lesson 3. Release what you can't control. A lot of people go to sleep still carrying things that were never fully theirs to carry. That is one reason the mind stays restless at night. The day may be over, but inside you are still holding conversations you cannot redo, reactions you cannot manage, outcomes you cannot force, and events that already happened exactly as they happened. The body is in bed, but the mind is still trying to control what is already gone or what has not arrived yet. No wonder sleep feels far away. This is where the third practice matters so much. Before you sleep, you have to put down what does not belong in your hands. That sounds simple, but it is one of the hardest things to do, honestly. During the day, control becomes a hidden addiction. You want people to understand you a certain way. You want plans to unfold the way you imagined. You want effort to guarantee results. You want someone's tone, timing, response, or decision to match what would have made the day easier for you. Then reality does what reality always does. It stays partly outside your reach. The moment that happens, tension begins. The mind resists, it replays, it argues, it keeps reaching for influence where no real influence exists. By night, that resistance often becomes exhaustion. You feel it in the thoughts that keep circling without resolution, in the sentence you wish you had said differently, in the message you are still waiting for, in the fear of how tomorrow might go, in the pressure of wanting things to settle right now, even though some things will only settle with time, and some may never settle the way you wanted at all. If you do not notice this pattern, you end the day still gripping life too tightly. Sleep becomes difficult when your inner world is still trying to negotiate with reality. The Stoics understood this with unusual clarity. Epictetus kept returning to one basic distinction. Some things are up to you, and some things are not. It sounds almost too simple, but at night that distinction becomes deeply practical. Your effort is yours. Your intention is yours. Your character is yours. The way you spoke, the way you corrected yourself, the way you handled the moment once it was in front of you, that is yours. But the final response from another person is not. The full outcome is not. The past is not. Tomorrow is not yet. And when you fail to separate those things, your mind pays for it. That payment often looks like overthinking, not useful reflection, just mental grasping. You run through the same scene again, hoping a different replay will create a different feeling. You imagine future scenarios as if worry could soften them in advance. You keep holding emotional weight that belongs partly to other people, partly to time, and partly to life itself. None of it gives you peace. It only keeps the nervous system awake. Releasing control does not mean becoming passive. It does not mean pretending nothing matters. It means you stop demanding from yourself a power you do not possess. That is a deeply humane thing to do. Some nights, what you need most is not a solution. It is a quieter relationship with uncertainty. You need to be able to say, I did what was mine to do today. The rest is no longer mine to carry tonight. That sentence can soften a mind more than many people realize. It does not solve everything, but it stops your soul from working overtime on things it cannot settle in the dark. There is relief in naming this clearly. Maybe you cannot control whether someone understands your heart. Maybe you cannot control how fast the results appear. Maybe you cannot control whether a person apologizes, whether the opportunity comes back, whether tomorrow unfolds smoothly, whether life gives you the exact closure you wanted. Once you admit that, the struggle changes. You stop fighting for total control and start returning to inner responsibility. That is where peace begins to re-enter. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself not to be dragged around by what lay outside his rule. He was not trying to become detached in a lifeless way. He was trying to protect the mind from unnecessary suffering. There is enough real pain in life already. We do not need to double it by clinging all night to what never belonged to our command. This practice is especially important before sleep, because nighttime makes helplessness feel bigger. In daylight, noise distracts you. At night, silence reveals what you are still resisting. That is why a thought can feel 10 times heavier in bed than it did in the afternoon. The room is dark, the body is tired, and the mind starts reaching for certainty it cannot find. If you meet that moment with the same grasping, the night becomes another battlefield. If you meet it with release, the whole atmosphere changes. Sometimes that release is almost physical. You feel the grip in your chest. You notice the mind trying to reopen the day, and instead of following it endlessly, you pause. You remind yourself what was yours and what was not. You return the rest to where it belongs, to the future, to other people, to time, to God, if that language speaks to you, to life itself. You do not have to carry all of it into sleep to prove that it mattered. Letting go is not carelessness. It is proportion. It is the wisdom to know that not every unresolved thing needs one more hour of your mind before bed. Some things need patience, some need distance, some need tomorrow, some need nothing more from you at all. The stronger you become in recognizing that, the lighter your nights begin to feel. And there is another gift hidden in this practice. When you release what you cannot control, you recover energy for what you actually can guide. Your attitude, your integrity, your next step, your willingness to rest without turning rest into guilt. Instead of lying there trying to govern the whole world, you come back to the small, real center of your own soul. That center is where sleep becomes possible again. So tonight, before you close your eyes, ask yourself a quiet question. What am I still carrying that does not belong in my hands anymore? Then be brave enough to loosen your grip. Not because the issue is small, but because your mind deserves a boundary between honest responsibility and useless burden. Some things need action, some things need acceptance, and some things need to be released before the night can finally become kind to you. Lesson 4. Examine your thoughts. What keeps you awake at night is not always the day itself. Sometimes it is the way your mind has been talking about the day. That is why this next step matters. After you reflect, own your mistakes, and release what was never fully yours to control, there is still one place left to look: the thoughts that filled your inner world. Not every thought deserves trust just because it appeared in your head. Some of them disturbed your peace without telling the truth. Some of them made small things feel larger. Some kept repeating until they started sounding like facts. If you do not examine them, they follow you into bed and keep shaping your emotions long after the moment that triggered them is gone. A lot of people live too close to their thoughts. They hear something in the mind and immediately become loyal to it. A worry appears, and they treat it like a warning. A harsh judgment appears, and they call it honesty. A fearful prediction appears, and suddenly the body reacts as if it is already happening. By night, all of that mental activity leaves a residue. The room is quiet, but the mind is still full of noise it never questioned. This is why evening is such a powerful time for inner clarity. You finally have enough distance to ask, what was my mind doing today? What thought kept returning? What story kept darkening my mood? What did I keep telling myself that made the day heavier than it needed to be? Maybe it was something about tomorrow. Maybe it was something about your worth. Maybe it was a judgment about another person that kept feeding irritation. Maybe it was a private narrative of pressure, failure, rejection, or not being enough. Whatever it was, the point is not to panic over it. The point is to see it. Once you see a thought clearly, it loses some of its authority. That is one of the quiet truths behind this practice. Thoughts become powerful when they remain unobserved. They move quickly, they color everything, and because they are familiar, they often pass as reality. But when you slow down and look at one directly, something changes. You begin noticing the difference between a fact and an interpretation, between what happened and what your mind added to it, between the event itself and the sentence you kept repeating about it all day. That gap matters more than people think. A person can live through one difficult moment and then spend the next 8 hours suffering more from the thought than from the event. A comment hurts, then the mind says, "They never respect me." A delay happens, then the mind says, "Everything is going wrong." One mistake appears, then the mind turns it into, "I always do this." By the time night arrives, the body is tired, but the mind is still carrying all the exaggeration it created on top of reality. No wonder peace feels far away. The Stoics were deeply aware of this. They knew that the mind does not simply receive life, it interprets it. Epictetus kept pointing people back to this truth. What disturbs us is often not the thing itself, but the judgment we attach to it. That does not mean feelings are fake or that pain is imaginary. It means the mind has a way of adding unnecessary weight, and unless you examine that process, you end up sleeping beside your own distortions, as if they were companions. Examining your thoughts is how you stop doing that. This does not have to become a complicated exercise. You do not need to analyze every passing idea. What matters is noticing the thoughts that stayed, the ones that altered your state, the ones that kept disturbing your peace. Bring one into the light and ask a few honest questions. Is this true, or is it just familiar? Is this thought helping me see clearly, or only making me feel trapped? Did this thought bring me closer to wisdom today, or did it keep me agitated, fearful, bitter, or small? These questions do not silence the mind by force. They teach it not to believe everything it says. There is something deeply calming about that. When you stop merging with every thought, the night begins to soften. You no longer have to follow every dark path the mind offers you before sleep. You can notice the thought, question it, and let it lose strength. You can say, quietly, that fear may not be the truth, that judgment may be exaggerated, that story may not deserve another hour of my life tonight. This is not denial, it is mental discipline. It is the choice to protect your inner world from the kind of thinking that always leaves you more restless than before. And over time, this practice changes the atmosphere of your whole life. You become less easily disturbed by mental drama. You stop treating every thought like a message from reality. You learn to recognize when your own mind is tired, emotional, and unreliable. That awareness is a form of freedom. It helps you end the day with more truth and less noise, more steadiness and less inner pollution. So before sleep, take a moment to look at the thoughts that shaped your day. Not all of them, just the ones that carried emotional weight. Ask whether they deserve your trust. Ask whether they deserve to follow you into the night. Some of them will not survive that kind of honesty. And that is a good thing, because the mind becomes quieter when it realizes it will no longer be allowed to disturb your peace without being questioned. Lesson 5. Disconnect from noise. Sometimes the reason your mind cannot settle at night has very little to do with the day itself, and a lot to do with what you keep feeding it right before sleep. The body is asking for rest, but the mind is still being stimulated. One more video, one more scroll, one more message, one more check to see if anything changed, as if the next piece of information might somehow make you feel finished inside. But it rarely does. Most of the time it leaves you even more mentally crowded. You may feel tired, but not quiet. The eyes get heavy while the mind stays alert, full of fragments, comparisons, reactions, images, and unfinished impressions that have no place to go. That is why disconnecting from noise matters so much. Night should be a soft landing, not a final wave of stimulation, yet many people move towards sleep in the exact opposite way. They stay plugged into the world until the last possible minute, then wonder why peace feels so far away once the lights are off. What enters the mind late in the evening does not disappear the moment you close your eyes. It lingers. It echoes. It changes the texture of your inner world. The nervous system stays activated. Thoughts keep moving. Sleep becomes less like rest and more like collapse after overstimulation. This is not only about screens, even though screens are a big part of it. Noise can take many forms. It can be endless information. It can be emotional conversations too late at night. It can be absorbing other people's chaos when your own soul is already tired. It can be checking the news one last time and carrying fresh anxiety into bed. It can even be filling every quiet moment with sound because silence feels unfamiliar. Whatever form it takes, the effect is often the same. The mind has no time to clear itself before sleep. A quiet mind usually does not happen by accident. It is invited. That invitation begins with a boundary. At some point in the evening, you have to decide that the day is no longer going to keep entering you. You stop taking in more than you can digest. You stop reaching for stimulation just because stillness feels strange. You give your mind a chance to slow down before your body asks it to disappear into sleep. That transition matters more than people realize. Without it, the inside of your life never gets a clean ending. The Stoics understood the value of protecting the mind from unnecessary disturbance. Marcus Aurelius kept bringing himself back from distraction, from agitation, from the pull of things that could easily scatter him. That same principle belongs here. You do not have to end the day available to everything. You do not need to give the final hour of your night to the loudest voices, the fastest images, or the most pointless distractions. You are allowed to close the door. And honestly, your mind needs that door. It needs some stretch of time where nothing new is demanding a reaction. No more comparison, no more updates, no more pretending that endless input is helping you unwind when it is really keeping your inner world unsettled. The mind grows quieter when you stop handing it fresh material every few minutes. At first, that silence may feel uncomfortable. You may notice the urge to reach for your phone simply because emptiness makes you restless. But that discomfort is revealing something important. It is showing you how dependent the mind has become on noise. Staying with that discomfort for a little while is part of the practice. You do not have to make it dramatic. Just begin creating a gentler ending to the night. Let the screens go dark earlier. Step back from the stream of other people's thoughts. Stop inviting so much of the world into the last moments of your day. Sit in a quieter room. Breathe without multitasking. Let your mind have fewer things to hold. This is not a punishment. It is a return. What often surprises people is how much lighter they feel once they stop crowding the evening. Thoughts become easier to notice. Emotions become easier to understand. Reflection becomes possible. Gratitude becomes easier to access. Sleep stops feeling like something you have to force, because your mind is no longer being trained to stay alert until the very end. There is also a deeper reason this matters. Constant noise keeps you away from yourself. It fills every gap before you can feel what is actually going on inside. That may be convenient during the day, but at night it becomes costly. If you never step away from distraction, you never really meet your own inner state. You just keep postponing that meeting until your thoughts finally ambush you in bed. A quieter evening changes that. It gives you a chance to settle inwardly before sleep instead of being overwhelmed by everything you postponed. So before bed, let there be less input, less urgency, less stimulation, less access. Allow the night to become quieter on purpose, because sleep comes more easily when the mind is no longer being crowded right up to the edge of it. Lesson 6. Read Stoic wisdom. The final thoughts you give your mind at night matter more than you think. Right before sleep, the mind becomes unusually impressionable. It is tired, open, less defended, and more likely to carry the tone of whatever touched it last. That is why reading a few lines of real wisdom before bed can change the whole feeling of the night. Not because a quote magically fixes your life, and not because philosophy is some decorative ritual for thoughtful people. It helps because the mind needs something steadier than its own late-night noise. Without that, it usually drifts back toward whatever has been agitating it all day. A worry returns. A regret grows larger. A fear about tomorrow starts pretending to be important simply because the room is quiet and you are too tired to challenge it properly. This is when many people reach for more distraction, but distraction does not steady the mind. It only delays the moment. Stoic reading does something different. It brings your attention back to first principles. It reminds you what matters, what does not, what belongs to you, and what never did. It gives the mind a cleaner voice to listen to before sleep. That is why the practice is so valuable. You are not reading to collect ideas. You are reading to reset your inner posture. A few honest lines from Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, or Epictetus can do that in a way long explanations often cannot. They cut through emotional fog. They return the mind to proportion. They make the day feel less absolute. Suddenly, the thing that felt so heavy an hour ago is still real, but no longer feels like the center of the universe. That is one of the quiet gifts of Stoic wisdom. It does not always remove pain, but it often puts pain back into perspective. And perspective is deeply calming at night. Think about how easily the mind exaggerates before sleep. A small problem becomes tomorrow's disaster. An awkward moment becomes proof of failure. One uncertain area of life starts staining everything else. In that state, you do not always need more thinking. You need a wiser frame. You need to hear something truer than the anxious voice that has been filling the room inside your head. Stoic wisdom offers that kind of truth. It speaks plainly. It does not flatter you, but it does not terrify you either. It steadies you. There is also something beautiful about ending the day in conversation with minds that care deeply about inner order. The Stoics knew what it meant to feel pressure, grief, uncertainty, frustration, and fear. They were not writing from fantasy. They were writing from contact with life. That is why their words still feel alive at night. They meet the same human problems we still carry: regret, impatience, anger, restlessness, attachment, and the need to return to ourselves after being pulled in too many directions. When you read them before bed, it can feel less like consuming content and more like sitting down with someone who refuses to let your mind wander too far from what is true. That alone can soften the night. But the way you do this matters. This is not about reading 10 pages just to say you were disciplined. It is not homework. It is not performance. You only need a few lines that you can actually sit with. One paragraph, one page, even one sentence, if it is the right one. What matters is not quantity. It is contact. You want something that slows the mind down and gives it a better direction than the one it was already taking. Sometimes a short line is enough, a reminder that you do not control everything, a reminder that your judgment shapes your suffering, a reminder that what is good for the soul is often quiet, simple, and inward, a reminder that the day is over and that your task now is not to solve life in bed, but to meet the night with more order than you had an hour ago. That is the deeper purpose of this habit. You begin teaching your mind that sleep is not preceded by chaos, but by return. Night after night, the pattern changes. Instead of ending the day with noise, you end it with principle. Instead of handing your final attention to the algorithm, the feed, the message, or the fear, you place it in something that has weight. Over time, that changes the atmosphere of your evenings. The mind starts expecting calm instead of stimulation. Reflection becomes easier. Release becomes easier. Sleep becomes less like escape and more like a quiet surrender into rest. So, before bed, give your mind something worthy to carry into the dark. Let the last voice it hears be one that calls it back to clarity, restraint, and perspective. Read slowly. Read a little. Let the words stay with you. Because sometimes a restless mind does not need more input. It needs one true sentence before sleep. Lesson 7. Be grateful. By the time night comes, the mind often remembers what went wrong more easily than what was still good. That is part of why evenings can feel so heavy. A problem from the day stays bright in memory. An awkward moment keeps replaying. Something unfinished continues pressing on you. Meanwhile, the quieter parts of the day, the parts that were still decent, still meaningful, still alive with some goodness, disappear into the background. Gratitude brings them back into view. This is not about forcing a cheerful mood before bed. It is not about pretending the day was beautiful when it felt hard. And it is not the shallow kind of gratitude that denies pain just to sound positive. Real gratitude is more honest than that. It looks directly at the day, including its difficulty, and still asks, what was not lost? What remained? What was given to me that I almost missed because my mind was too busy carrying everything else? That question can soften a night in a very real way. A lot of inner exhaustion comes from mental narrowing. Once something painful happens, the mind starts organizing the whole day around that one point. Then the day begins to feel darker than it really was. Gratitude interrupts that distortion. It does not erase the hard parts, but it prevents them from becoming the entire story. It reminds you that even a difficult day can still contain a quiet mercy, a useful lesson, a kind word, a moment of strength, a small beauty, a meal, a body that carried you, a chance to begin again tomorrow. Those things matter. They matter because the soul becomes dry when it only looks at lack. Over time, that habit creates a restless kind of poverty inside a person. No matter what is present, the mind keeps scanning for what is missing, what is late, what is unfair, what should have been better. Then even rest becomes difficult because dissatisfaction keeps the inner world tense. Gratitude loosens that tension. It returns some balance. It says, yes, there were burdens today, but not only burdens. Yes, some things were painful, but not everything was empty. The Stoics understood this in their own way. They knew life is uncertain, fragile, and often outside our control. That is exactly why appreciation matters. Marcus Aurelius could look at ordinary things, waking up, speaking, thinking, doing his duty, and treat them as reasons to be thankful rather than as things automatically owed to him. That perspective changes the emotional tone of a life. It keeps entitlement from poisoning the mind. It makes peace more available. At night, this becomes especially powerful because gratitude changes what you carry into sleep. When you end the day only with judgment, correction, and release, the process may still feel a little austere. Necessary, yes, but incomplete. Gratitude adds warmth. It reminds you that the purpose of reflection is not just to become sharper, but also to remain human. You are not a machine reviewing performance. You are a person trying to live with more awareness. Gratitude protects that awareness from becoming cold, and it does something else quietly. It teaches the mind not to overlook life. So much of what sustains you is subtle. A peaceful minute, a breath of relief, someone who stayed, something you handled better than your old self would have, a temptation you resisted, a piece of wisdom that returned at the right moment, the fact that you made it through the day at all. When you notice these things, your relationship with the day changes. You stop ending every night as if life only failed you. Sometimes it did not fail you. Sometimes it fed you in quieter ways than your anxious mind was trained to notice. This is why gratitude before sleep can feel almost cleansing. It gathers the scattered pieces of the day and lets a gentler truth emerge. Not that everything was good, but that goodness was still present. Not that nothing hurt, but that pain did not have the whole stage. Not that tomorrow is guaranteed, but that today still held something worth honoring before it disappears into memory. Keep this practice simple. Do not turn it into a performance. You do not need a perfect list. Just name a few things, honestly. Something that helped you, something you learned, something that remained steady, something beautiful that would have gone unnoticed if you had not stopped long enough to see it. Let those things register. Let them have emotional weight too. That changes the way the night closes. A grateful mind usually sleeps differently from a resentful one. It feels less crowded, less starved, less trapped in what was missing. There is more room inside it, more softness, more proportion. And from that place, rest begins to feel less like escape and more like trust. Because sometimes the day does not need to be redeemed. It only needs to be remembered more completely. Lesson 8. Expect tomorrow's trials. A calmer night often begins when you stop demanding that tomorrow be easy. A lot of anxiety before sleep comes from this hidden hope that the next day should unfold smoothly, that people should be reasonable, that your mood should cooperate, that plans should stay intact, and that nothing uncomfortable should show up to test you. Then the mind starts reaching into tomorrow, trying to secure it in advance. It wants a clean day, a manageable day, a predictable day, but life has never promised any of that. And the more tightly you cling to that hope, the more fragile you feel before the next day has even begun. This is why the Stoics practiced mental preparation. They did not do it to become negative. They did it so reality would not shock them so easily. They understood that part of peace comes from expecting difficulty without dramatizing it. Not because life is only hardship, but because hardship visits every life. Delays happen. People disappoint you. Your own mind feels heavier on some mornings than it did the night before. Unexpected pressure enters. Energy drops. The day asks more from you than you wanted to give. When you do not prepare for any of this, each challenge feels like an interruption. When you do prepare, the same challenge feels more like part of the road. That changes the whole posture of the mind. Instead of going to sleep with anxious hopefulness, I just need tomorrow to go perfectly, you begin entering the night with steadier realism. You remind yourself that tomorrow may contain irritation, temptation, fatigue, distraction, delay, misunderstanding, pressure, or bad news. Not all of it, perhaps, maybe only some of it, but enough to matter. And once you accept that possibility, something inside you stops bargaining with life. You are no longer asking for a frictionless day in order to stay composed. You are preparing to remain composed, even if friction appears. That is a very different kind of strength. It keeps small difficulties from feeling so personal. If someone is rude tomorrow, you are less likely to act shocked. If your energy is lower than expected, you do not immediately call the whole day a failure. If something goes wrong early, you are less likely to let it poison the rest of the day. Preparation gives the mind a wider frame. It says, yes, this may be difficult. Yes, I may be tested. But difficulty is not proof that something has gone wrong. It may simply be the kind of day that asks more from me. Marcus Aurelius did this often. He would remind himself that he was going to meet difficult people, selfishness, ingratitude, ignorance, and friction, not because he wanted to darken the morning before it arrived, but because he wanted to meet it with steadiness instead of surprise. He knew that the person who expects no resistance becomes emotionally fragile the moment resistance appears. The same is true at night. When you prepare your mind for tomorrow's trials, you reduce the power those trials have over your peace. You stop giving them the advantage of surprise, and more importantly, you stop building your rest on fantasy. Sleep becomes calmer because you are no longer secretly trying to control the future by worrying about it. You are doing something wiser. You are strengthening your posture toward it. There is an important difference between preparation and fear. Fear imagines tomorrow's trials and collapses before they arrive. Preparation imagines them and becomes more inwardly ready. Fear says, what if I cannot handle it? Preparation says, if something difficult comes, I will meet it with as much clarity and discipline as I can. One weakens the mind, the other steadies it. That distinction matters, especially before bed, because nighttime has a way of turning uncertainty into anxiety if you leave it unguarded. The mind starts imagining tomorrow, but without discipline, it turns every possibility into emotional noise. Preparation cuts through that. It gives the imagination a better use. Instead of inventing disasters, you begin rehearsing strength. You tell yourself the truth. Tomorrow may ask for patience. It may ask for restraint. It may ask for courage. It may ask for emotional control. Fine. Then let me enter sleep already willing to bring those things. That willingness is powerful. It makes the next day feel less like a threat and more like a field of practice, not a punishment, not a trap, a field of practice. Somewhere you will again have the chance to carry yourself well. That perspective can ease a lot of the quiet pressure people feel before sleep. You do not need tomorrow to be gentle in order to face it. You only need to remember what kind of person you want to be when tomorrow is not. So before you close your eyes, spend a moment preparing your mind honestly. Tomorrow may not unfold the way you want. Someone may test your patience. Your own thoughts may test your discipline. Something may arrive uninvited. Let that be true. Then remind yourself that being tested is not the same as being defeated. Sometimes the best way to protect tomorrow's peace is to stop expecting tomorrow to spare you. And once you make peace with that, the night becomes lighter, because now you are not falling asleep hoping life will be easy. You are falling asleep ready to meet it. Lesson 9. Set tomorrow's direction. A lot of people go to sleep thinking about what they have to do tomorrow, but very few stop to decide how they want to be tomorrow. That difference matters. Tasks shape the surface of a day. Direction shapes the person living it. You can go to bed with a full plan, a long list, even clear obligations, and still wake up inwardly unprepared. Then the day begins. Pressure enters. Your mood shifts. Someone irritates you. Something unexpected happens. And before you know it, you are no longer living the day with intention. You are being pulled through it. The schedule may still exist, but your inner posture is missing. This is why the night is the right time to set direction. Not in a complicated way, not by trying to control every detail of tomorrow before it arrives. What you are doing here is quieter than that. You are choosing the values, the tone, and the inner stance you want to carry into the next day. You are reminding yourself before sleep of the kind of mind you want to wake up with. That has more power than people realize. Without direction, the mind usually wakes up and defaults to whatever is strongest in the moment. Sometimes that is stress. Sometimes it is laziness. Sometimes it is emotional residue from yesterday. Sometimes it is distraction, hurry, self-doubt, or the feeling that you are already behind before the day has even properly started. A clear inner direction interrupts that drift. It gives the mind something steadier to return to when the day begins pulling at it from different sides. Maybe tomorrow needs patience from you. Maybe it needs discipline. Maybe it needs restraint in one conversation, courage in one decision, focus in one important block of work, or humility in the way you handle a mistake. The point is to know this before the day starts asking for it. That way, you are not waking up empty and hoping your best self appears by accident. You are entering the next day with a chosen standard already alive in your mind. The Stoics understood this deeply. They did not leave character to chance. They prepared it. Marcus Aurelius did not simply wait to see what kind of man the day would make him. He kept returning to what kind of man he intended to be within the day. That is the spirit of this practice. You are not planning only your actions. You are preparing your soul, and that changes how tomorrow meets you. When your direction is clear, ordinary difficulties lose some of their power to throw you off course. An interruption is still an interruption, but it does not define the whole mood. A frustrating person is still frustrating, but you remember that your aim was patience. A wave of resistance still shows up, but you already decided that discipline mattered more than comfort. The day stops feeling so random because there is already an inner axis running through it. This is especially useful before sleep because nighttime has a way of blurring tomorrow into one heavy mass. Everything starts to feel mixed together. Responsibilities, worries, unfinished work, possible problems. It all gathers into a vague pressure. Setting direction cuts through that pressure. It says, in effect, I do not need to solve tomorrow tonight. I only need to enter it with a clear spirit. That alone can calm the mind. You do not need 10 intentions. One is enough if it is real. Tomorrow, I want to be calm. Tomorrow, I want to be disciplined. Tomorrow, I want to speak more carefully. Tomorrow, I want to stay focused and not let noise steal the day. Tomorrow, I want to move with more self-respect. A simple inner commitment like that can create surprising clarity. It gives your mind a clean signal before sleep, instead of leaving it tangled in vague pressure. There is also something deeply stabilizing in deciding who you want to be before the world starts speaking to you again. It keeps your identity from being shaped only by reaction. It reminds you that your life is not just a collection of demands coming at you. You still have authorship. You still get to choose the spirit in which you meet the next day, even if you cannot choose everything the day will contain. That choice matters. It builds continuity between your nights and your mornings. Reflection is no longer only about understanding the day that passed. It starts becoming preparation for the day that is coming. The night becomes a bridge, not a collapse. You finish one day with honesty, then quietly place one intention into the next. Over time, that changes more than your sleep. It changes the quality of your character because you are no longer waking up inwardly directionless. So before you fall asleep tonight, ask yourself one clear question. What do I want to carry into tomorrow from the person I am trying to become? Let the answer be simple. Let it be honest. Then take that thought with you into the dark. Because tomorrow is shaped not only by what you do when morning comes, it is also shaped by what you quietly choose the night before. Lesson 10. End the day in peace. After all of this, the final task is simple. Do not carry the day into sleep in a spirit of struggle. That is what peace means here. Not a perfect mood, not a magical absence of thought, not the kind of calm that comes because life suddenly gave you easy answers. Peace at night is something quieter and more honest than that. It is the state that becomes possible when you have looked back, told yourself the truth, released what was never yours to control, examined what disturbed your mind, stepped away from noise, steadied yourself with wisdom, remembered what was still good, prepared for tomorrow, and chosen the spirit you want to carry into it. Once those things are done, there is nothing left to wrestle with. The day may still have been imperfect. Some questions may still be unanswered. Some pain may still be present. But now the inner world is no longer chaotic. It has been met, and that changes the feeling of the night completely. A lot of people do not know how to end a day. They simply run out of energy. There is a difference. Running out of energy is not the same as entering rest. One is collapse, the other is release. Collapse happens when the body is too tired to keep going, but the mind is still tense, still replaying, still gripping, still carrying the weight of unfinished emotion. Release is different. Release says, enough for today. It says, what needed honesty has been faced. What needed correction has been named. What needed to be put down has been put down. From that place, sleep stops feeling like escape from pressure and starts feeling like a rightful return to stillness. That return matters deeply, because the way you end the day teaches your mind what night is for. If every evening ends in stimulation, replay, pressure, and mental strain, The mind begins to associate the bed with noise. The body lies down, but the inner world stays on guard. Over time, that creates a kind of hidden fear of stillness. But when the night ends in peace, something else begins to form. The mind learns that darkness is not where it gets attacked by everything unresolved. It learns that night can be a place of order, surrender, and repair. That is one of the quiet powers of a Stoic evening routine. It does not promise that you will never feel restless again. It does something more realistic and more valuable. It teaches you how to stop adding extra suffering to the final moments of the day. Marcus Aurelius often returned to inward order, to the need to keep the soul from being dragged around by what had already happened or by what had not yet arrived. That same spirit belongs here. The day is done. Let it be done. Tomorrow is not here yet. Let it remain unopened for a few more hours. Peace begins when you stop trying to live both days at once. And for many people, that is exactly what has been happening at night. Yesterday remains unresolved. Tomorrow arrives too early. The heart is caught in what already happened, while the mind is reaching toward what has not happened yet. Meanwhile, the present moment, the only place where rest can actually occur, gets lost. Ending the day in peace means returning to that present moment. The bed, the breath, the quiet, the simple truth that there is nothing more required from you right now except to let go. There is humility in that. You accept that you are human, that the day was limited because you are limited, that some things were done well and some were not. That growth is still in progress, that life will continue tomorrow. You do not demand perfection from yourself before allowing rest. You do not treat sleep as a reward for finally becoming flawless. You let rest be part of wisdom, part of discipline, part of the order you are trying to build. This is why peace at night is not passive. It is chosen. You choose not to reopen what has already been faced. You choose not to restart arguments with life when the hour has come for surrender. You choose not to search for one more answer just to quiet the feeling of uncertainty. You choose to trust that some things will become clearer after rest, not before it. That trust is powerful. It softens the whole nervous system. It tells the mind that it no longer has to stand guard over everything until morning, and from there, sleep becomes different, lighter, cleaner, less like a crash at the end of a hard day, and more like a gentle closing of it. You enter the night with less resistance in you. The body feels safer. The mind feels less crowded. The soul no longer feels trapped in unfinished motion. Even if life is still imperfect, something inside you has become more settled. That is enough. So when you lie down tonight, do not ask for a perfect mind. Ask for a peaceful one. Let the day be complete, even if it was incomplete in many ways. Let yourself become quiet without forcing silence. Let the breath slow. Let the room be enough. Let rest come as an act of inner order, not emotional defeat. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do before sleep is stop fighting the day and let peace close it for you. So maybe tonight does not have to end the way so many nights have ended before. Maybe you do not have to lie there, feeling your mind get louder the moment the room gets quiet. Maybe the bed does not have to become the place where every unfinished thought, every regret, every pressure about tomorrow suddenly comes alive at once. Maybe sleep does not have to feel like something you chase, force, or hope for, while your inner world keeps resisting it. Because now you know something different. The night is not just where the day collapses. It is where the day can be put down properly. It is where you can look back without cruelty. Tell yourself the truth without shame. Loosen your grip on what was never fully yours. and step away from the noise that kept your mind crowded. It is where you can return to wisdom, remember what was still good, prepare quietly for difficulty, and choose the spirit you want to wake up with. When you do that, sleep changes. It stops being an escape from inner chaos and starts becoming part of the order you are building inside your life. That is what makes this routine so powerful. None of these things look dramatic from the outside. No one sees the private honesty, the releasing, the reflection, the quiet shift in attitude before you close your eyes. But that is often where a better life actually begins. Not in loud breakthroughs, not in public promises, in the small moments when you stop abandoning yourself at the end of the day, in the simple decision to meet the night with more awareness than you had yesterday. Over time, that changes more than your sleep. It changes the way you carry your days, because you stop living as if nothing inside you needs tending. You become more honest, more deliberate, less full of mental residue. You wake up lighter because you did not go to sleep tangled in everything. The mind becomes steadier, the heart becomes less crowded, and little by little, the end of the night starts shaping the quality of your life. That is the quiet promise here. If you learn how to end the day well, you do not only rest better, you live better. Your nights stop feeling like emotional leftovers and start becoming a kind of inner discipline, a gentle one, a human one, the kind that says, before I surrender this day, I will clear what I can, release what I must, and leave the rest with peace. So tonight, when the room gets quiet, do not be afraid of the silence. Use it. Let it become the place where you return to yourself. And when you finally close your eyes, let sleep be more than exhaustion. Let it be peace, chosen on purpose.